Okay. Ready?
Yep.
You figured out what yarn that is?
Nope.
Or you have enough of it?
I have enough of it.
I was going to say, I don't think we have any more of that. Hello!
Hello.
Liz found a sweater. So she's working
It was
on
almost done.
Good morning and welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
The Dear Becky and Lizzie edition.
Woohoo! Because it's Thursday. It's Thursday.
Yes, Thursday.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, a.k.a. for today's purposes. Let me get in the camera a little better. Becky, owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in damp and yucky Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm Liz. I'm the minion there.
It's not yucky all the time. It's just yucky outside today.
It's Transylvania County, the land where the water falls and falls and falls.
We had a lot of waterfalls, so one of our slogans is the land of waterfalls. And it's the land where water falls. A lot. So
if there's a chance of rain, you can bet that Brevard is going to get rain.
There's sugar on this peanut butter cookie. Breakfast with lots of sugar. Okay.
It's peanut butter, so it's healthy for you.
Okay. I need food. I had yogurt this morning, just no food. My yogurt, one bite, I hit my tooth. Got my tooth filled last week. Actually, a week ago today. And a lot of it had to be filled. And before I got it filled, didn't really hurt. Didn't anything. Now that it's filled, it's like super sensitive to hot and cold and everything. I think it's still healing. I know.
Yeah, it's because they went in and drilled around and
a lot
messed with it.
And now it's like, what are you doing to me? But I don't think it's enough pain for me to go back to the dentist. It's just sensitivity. It's not like, oh my gosh, my nerve, like I have to pull my tooth out of my face. Anyway, so, you already said who you were?
Yeah.
I was eyeing my cookie.
I know.
So I had yogurt this morning, but not my bagel because I was running late. So sustenance to get me through this. And then we had things to deal with when we arrived. So, okay.
Yes. This is a multi-part question.
Yes, we have a writer in who likes to give us options for questions, and we don't always hit every part of her questions, but we try.
Yes.
And some of these she might be sadly disappointed because they're not topics that I do things with, but we'll try.
We'll try.
What were you saying?
Dear B&L,
okay.
'Tis the season.
Yes, before we end filming, you gotta show off your dress.
Okay.
But you're gonna do it now?
I'll wait.
Make them listen to us, and then they can see your dress. Go ahead.
With Advent sock season upon us here, what are the best types of heels to use with self-striping yarn?
Oh, that one. Okay.
I realize the go-to is likely an afterthought heel, but I have yet to find a video that gives a good description of placement. They are either length of foot or cuff to heel, but no description of how to address both at the same time. Liz, take a breath here. I like that.
Because Liz kind of chops through and then...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you take a breath?
I did.
Okay, good.
Being silly. I looked on the Tips and Tricks channel before posing this question.
Okay. I'm not as experienced with socks as other people are. I have made some socks. This is a self-striping yarn where I did not an afterthought. I'm doing my first afterthought heel right now, and it's not done yet. It's just sitting there waiting. For people who aren't aware, an afterthought heel is, as the name implies, you knit the whole thing. You put some scrap yarn in where you want to put the heel in, and later you go back and do it. And I haven't actually done that yet. I'm going to experiment with that my first time now. But this is one of some self-striping yarn that I did that I did a short row heel. And here's part of the thing with this, with trying to approach this question. It's a personal preference question. Because I could say, oh, it's definitely best to just make the heel as you go and do this type of heel and blah, blah, blah. And someone else is going to completely disagree with me. Someone else is going to say, no, what makes the most magical heel of all time is if you do the afterthought heel. And the Ready Set Sock book that we have has an afterthought heel that's different than any heel I've seen. It has like equally spaced decreases, which could be an afterthought heel thing or could just be particular to this book. Rather than the short row heel has decreases on either side, but not front and back. I think that's one of the beauties of self-striping patterning yarn is it's going to look how it's going to look. And no matter what, someone is going to think you magically did things on purpose.
Whether you're doing the heel flap or the short row heel, or it's going to do different things to make that heel stand out. Mm-hmm. You could even switch to regular other yarn to make a solid heel.
Like this is a self patterning where I did the heel flap and the turn on the bottom and the gusset. And it's got a cool, like, you have an angled shape to the stripes, and you have some stripes across the back. You don't have the angled shape to the stripes when you do a short row heel, or a fish lips kiss heel might have the same effect. It looks like half the heel. Like, the color changed back here. It didn't magically change at the peak of the heel. Unless you really want to manipulate the color, you can't necessarily control how it's going to work. A solution to all of this, honestly, putting in the afterthought heel means it's not necessarily going to look like it jives with the rest of the sock. It might have the same colors as the rest of the sock, but the place they might end up, like if I'd done an afterthought heel with this, I could have ended up with one of the reds or the grello for the heel, whereas putting in the heel as I went almost made it look like it naturally fit there. It was a happy accident. One solution for all of this is to do at least your toes and your heels and possibly your cuffs in an alternate color.
Yeah.
Because then again, it looks like you did it on purpose because you did. And it doesn't fit with the stripies. Like that's one of the things I'm doing with this guy right here is I'm switching out the colors. So I've got one that has Mountains Are Calling as the main color, and the toes and the heels are in White Squirrel Shuffle. And the other one, White Squirrel Shuffle, and the toes and heels are in Mountains Are Calling. Do it on purpose. Afterthought heel will work if you want it to look distinct from the rest of the sock. Because let me see if I can find it. And then I'll address the placement, as best I can, the placement question. This... I'm doing the crazy colorful one of these yarns, the purple, actually changed colors, but it hasn't changed very much since I've done this. Like, it's gonna change through all these blues and greens and things, but it's taking a long time to change because every round I'm also like only every 2 out of every 4 rounds is done with that color. So it's been purple and it's maybe just starting to change. And the afterthought heel, the line for it's right here. When I go back and put it in when I'm done, I'm planning on doing it with the color changing, and that will probably be in a very different color than it was where I started the sock. However, I think it's gonna look cool because it'll just look like a different color. It's gonna just, because the colors are changing so slowly with the perth, it's just gonna look like a random other color I put in. So it's gonna be all kind of patchwork on purpose. What I think the writer is getting at when she says the placement, especially for an afterthought heel. Often when people talk about heels and toes, so if it's a cuff down, we talk about the length of the foot, right? From your toe to your heel. And if it's cuff down and the heel is included, you do the heel and you work on the foot, and it says to start doing the toe 1.5 inches to 2 inches from where you want the sock to end. It's the same for the heel, basically. So it's like if you're doing toe up, you want to start your heel about 1.5 inches to 2 inches from where the end of your heel would be if you're measuring your whole foot. And I'm sorry I keep leaning this way because when we film on the phone, the stop and start and picture buttons are over here. So when I sit over here,
she has to look through them.
I have to look through them. So I'm like, that probably looks weird when people can't see those. That's okay. I will just have the start and stop button hovering on my chin, and try to act like it's not there. So going toe up, it's the same thing. You want to start your heel 1.5 inches to 2 inches. It depends on how much what we call negative ease you want in your sock. Because that's another thing with socks is if you make all the measurements perfect to your foot, you might find that the sock feels kind of loose when it's on. That's one of the reasons people go down so much on needle sizes, to get tight stitches and also to have that elastic grip to your foot. If you make it the perfect size for your foot, then when it's on, it's going to feel like it's too big, often. If you make it just a little bit, like a 1/2 inch or more, what we call negative ease, which is tightness to it, then it'll stretch when it's on your foot if it's made out of the right material. If you don't have that nylon, anything kind of elasticy in it, it might stretch and stay stretched. But it might feel more comfortable if it's a little smaller. So I might go with the 1.5 inches rather than the 2 inches to figure out where to go with your toe or your heel.
And all of this comes from basic practice.
Practice and what patterns have told me. And I haven't practiced enough to be the complete expert on this.
But even for people that knit socks all the time, when they started knitting socks, they'll tell us, that they had to mess around with their needle size to find which ones they really liked on their feet and which patterns fit their feet best. Like Amy, shout out to Amy, she makes socks all the time, and she loves the way the Hermione's heel fits her heel. And, so like a lot of it is just trial and error.
Trial and error and personal preference.
Yep.
And you're going to get different answers depending on who you ask. You can ask 5 different expert sock knitters, and they will all violently disagree.
You'll get 10 different opinions.
Yes. From 5 people.
Yeah.
So an afterthought heel, like, the heel's not there. So you can't really try it on as you go to make sure it's the perfect fit. That is one of the disadvantages of the afterthought heel. But it's like imagining that this wasn't there. You still would want to put in the lifeline, the scrap yarn for your heel at that. If you're going toe up, you would want to go from your whole toe measurement to heel measurement minus that 1.5 inches. When it's talking about the cuff versus the foot, shout out to Carol. Her general rule of thumb is when you fold it, and again, this has the heel inside, but when you fold it, the foot and the cuff are the same length. And so that's, if the heel is not in there, it doesn't fold as nicely with this little angle, but it has the same reasoning of the length from your toe to your afterthought heel. You want that same length if you want a classic cuff to be from the end of your afterthought heel up to the top. So this one that I'm making, I can measure however long this has been cuffed down, however long this is. Honestly, I just follow the pattern. If I was doing toe up, I would definitely measure what was it to this line of scrap yarn and make my cuff about the same length from the scrap yarn.
That cuff's going to be a little short.
Well, this cuff, I followed the directions, and my gauge was off. So when you're doing cuff down, if you want that classic fold and fit, you should measure your foot, take off the 1.5 inches, and that's how long your cuff should be. I didn't do that with this. I just followed the instructions of how many repeats of this pattern. And again, since I didn't test my gauge, there's a really good chance this is just going to be ginormous on my foot, but I'm just testing out the pattern. I haven't reached that perfect fit yet. So that's my advice on that, is measure the length of your foot or the other person's foot and base it off of that. But people like all kinds of things. They like to do short cuffs, like the Rose City Rollers. You've got a really short cuff. The nice thing about knitting and crocheting is you can alter it to the style you like rather than what you're forced to buy in the shops. But that takes some trial and error. It means 2 or 3 times that you do it, it might not come out the way you want. And so on that note, some people practice with cheaper yarn first to get an idea. The thing is, your cheaper yarn, because you don't want to blow your whole budget on something that you're not going to wear, right? However, I just have the caveat that if you practice with cheaper yarn, it might not behave how the nicer yarn is going to. we had someone who the brim on their hat looked really weird, and it turned out it was the yarn. She did the exact same thing with a nicer yarn, and it looked great. So if you practice socks with some really inexpensive yarn, it may be helpful to figure out what you like, or you may find with the fancy yarn, it works better. So the outcome's different anyway. Just know that. Problems?
I'm trying to recreate the bottom of
that you'd already done and then
left sitting forever and a day.
Do you think you did it?
I'm pretty sure I know how to do it. It's
detective work later.
It's 3 double crochets and 1 triple crochet, and yeah,
and a chain or 2.
There's a chain in between each one of those. So okay,
I
diagnosed my crochet. Part 2. Can you make any recommendations for patterns to use with a 24 or 12-day advent calendar with or without a 100-gram accompanying skein?
Okay. I don't do advent calendars personally, so I don't have a wealth of knowledge on this. I can say there are several people, I can only think of one off the top of my head, who have written patterns that are designed for advent calendars. Amba O'Brien is one who often has patterns that are designed for advent calendars. I would say, like, one of the people I follow on Instagram, and I can't remember who, but it's someone who dyes yarn and stuff, and it was addressing the question of what can you do with a mini skein? Because advent calendars, for people who don't know, again, 12 or 24 day, or you get a little mini skein and every day leading up to Christmas when you open it. And these mini skeins can be 10 grams, can be 20 grams. That's part of the issue, is they're not all consistently the same. Like, I'm not sure what Yarn Babies, if it was, do we know what Daydream Dye Works was? Was it 10 grams or 20 grams? I want to say they were 10 grams. So they were, especially when it's 24, you're going to have smaller bits of yarn. Sometimes they have a theme where it's a gradient as you open it. Sometimes they're just all random, which is part of the fun. And when people are like, what can you do with these? You whatever you want is the most general answer. Sometimes, again, when she's talking about the 100-gram, like, solid alternate to it, I don't know if they'd all be enough to do a papillon. They might be, where you can change every row or you've done some mini skeins, but not all.
I know that with my mini skeins at the top of my papillon,
you had leftover?
I had leftovers out of 10, 15 gram mini skeins. But you would have to change them out as you got bigger.
Not everything's going to magically perfectly work with that.
I do know that other people have done Advent patterns. I don't know who wrote them, but we've had lots of people come in going, I did this Advent calendar shawl.
Sometimes you can look up, you can put Advent into the search in Ravelry, and that will help.
And some of them are Advent calendar patterns where every day you get a new clue, and some of them are designed to be used with Advent yarn. The other thing you could do is make it scrappy. Just have fun.
You could take any pattern.
Yeah.
That has the same amount of yardage as what you will have total.
Yeah.
And just give up control, and when you run out of day 1, start with day 2 and just see what happens. If it's a pattern that has a main color and a contrast, if you have that 100-gram, I would use all the minis as your main color.
Yeah.
Because contrast is usually something that has less involved.
Yeah.
And use the other one as your contrast, or you can change that. That's the beauty of it. Someone was saying with mini skeins in general, not necessarily the whole volume of an Advent, you can use your mini skeins to do toes and heels on socks with a main color. Now, that's only going to use up 1 or 2 of your mini skeins. It's not going to use them all up. It really depends on, like, especially that whole I don't care bar for what you have. It's like, do you feel like you need to use all of these in one project? Then you've got to figure out what you're going to do. a lot of people, when they get the mini skein, like we've had people who've just balled them up and made them into ornaments to hang on the tree. We've had people who've made mini sweaters out of each and every one of them.
Mini sweaters, little itty
so
bitty
matching,
things.
coordinating mini things. It depends. If that's not your jam, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that might sound like obvious, but it's not, because we find a lot of people who come into the shop think there are rules.
Guidelines.
There's lots of guidelines, but it's not necessarily rules of like, well, you have an advent calendar, so you must do this. Sometimes it's just the joy of testing out colors. Some indie dyers may be making colors that can be repeated again, like it might be an introduction to their yarn. Some of them, it might be what they call OOAK, one of a kind. I had to actually look that up one day because I'm like, what is this? OOAK is a really fancy name to say one of a kind. Like, may not be repeatable. We've got a lot from the Fiber Fairy that would be considered that. So, you have a lot of freedom for what you want to do with an advent calendar of yarn, and for some people that is unsettling, and for some people that is awesome and amazing. Some people are like, I need a plan. Like, we have sale yarn in here where it's just a bundle of awesome yarn that you save 50% on by buying the bundle, and we have people who walk in and say, but where's the pattern for it? And there is no pattern. It's just fun yarn. But I totally understand and respect that some people, they need guidance, they need an objective. And we are the kind of shop, we don't always have that. And so I think that's frustrating for some people who come in. And other people are just like, oh, this is awesome. I can experiment with this.
Well, and I try and there are some bundles that are like all different random colors. And there are some bundles that it's like, you got 6 or 5 balls of one color and one random color.
Are you talking about the stuff that we put together?
Yeah, stuff that I
Not
put
the
together.
advent calendar.
Not the advent calendars, but our surprise boxes. And then one ball of another color just because I didn't have...
Because we're trying to round out the amount.
But it's like, okay, so you have 500-gram worsted weight balls. You can make a sweater.
Yeah,
and
you
they're
don't
like,
have to use it all together.
What?
But
and I'm like, well... They're like, but I need 6 balls to make a sweater. I'm like, you have a 6th ball in a different color. So do a collar, do your cuffs, put a stripe in.
And sometimes that's exciting.
And sometimes
for people,
people are like, nope. And some people are like, that's a fantastic idea.
I
and then
thought of that.
I have other boxes that are like, you got 10 colors. Have fun. And some people are like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. And some people are like, nope.
And, you know... Different people like different things. That's why we don't have very many hard and fast rules in the crafting that we do. We have guidelines. We have suggestions. We have, this might help. My whole tips and tricks page is like, here are the tips and tricks that can make this go better. But it's not necessarily that you have to, right? There's a few things that I will be more insistent on, especially when I'm teaching intro knitting or intro crochet, especially in terms of how you wrap the yarn around your needle or hook, what direction. And even that, if you don't do it the way that I'm telling you to do it, then you're going to have to figure out, especially if your stitches come out looking funny, why they're coming out funny. I will be insistent on the direction you wrap your yarn for knitting and crochet so you get some consistency. But I'm not going to be super regimented on how you hold tension. It's going to be, try this. If this doesn't work, we have a couple other options. And other than that, you got to figure it out. Because not all things don't work for everybody. So, you know. But yeah, I don't do a lot of advent calendars. And some of that is because we don't sell it in the shop. I don't indulge in much that is beyond the shop. Because... I kind of have to be working with yarn that's here in the shop. And we haven't sold advent calendars through the shop. They are so labor intensive and time intensive. It's very hard for indie dyers to wholesale that to a shop. Because that's the other thing. Is all this work goes in and then you're only getting half of what you would charge if you just sold it directly to the consumer.
I have done a yarn advent calendar and a spinning advent calendar, and both times, well, the yarn advent calendar I treat it as scrappy yarn because it's all these little balls, and they all go beautifully together, but I treated it as scrappy yarn, so I mixed other things into it because, you know,
That's
you
the
have a
other
starting
thing.
palette.
You can use other stuff that you have with it. Absolutely.
And the spinning advent calendar, I made hair.
Yay! It really is, and I feel like I am more of the person here at the shop who will stay inside, color inside the lines, and follow a pattern. And like, if I did an advent calendar type thing, I might try to find a pattern that would work for it. Whereas I feel like you and Carol are both like,
I don't
take a little, you riff on stuff a little more than I do.
I don't change the pattern as much as you think I do. I might put crochet on it because I lost the will to live.
Yes, but see, I consider that not as big as a Carolization.
Yeah, but yeah, 98% of the pattern, like, not changing my raglan increases.
You'll change more often than not the thickness of yarn.
I'll change the
needles,
thickness of yarn and the needle, but that's not.
So Lizifying is like this, and Carolizing is like this.
Yeah.
And then there's the little me who stays inside the lines and follows the pattern, because that way I can tell my customer what to do.
I think, like, in terms of cooking,
I think they're all good.
I think that changing the yarn and the needles is like changing the size of the recipe. Like,
okay. Mm-hmm.
If your HelloFresh meal you cook it for 2 people and then you have to supersize it or whatever to cook it for 5. That's how I feel that changing the needle and yarn sizes.
Okay.
Instead of, you know,
yeah,
pulling out ingredients.
Instead of being like,
and
you know
going,
what spice would be better here?
Yes.
That's Carolizing.
That's Carolizing.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I would say we're pushing the metaphor way too far. But you do the kind of thing of like, okay, that sauce is gross, I'm not going to do it.
I do that.
Like literally with HelloFresh. And
yeah.
I compare that to, you know, you take out, you keep everything essentially the same, but you make little minor changes.
Yeah.
Like the needle size is like, we're not going to put this sauce on here today. And then for Carol, it's like, okay, but wouldn't this sauce be better if we added about 5 ingredients to it and really jazzed it up? And so that's, yeah. What were you going to say? I'm sorry. It's already gone because I talked too long.
Like, I'll change out real garlic for garlic powder so I don't see stuff.
Do some substituting things so it tastes better to you, or it like goes
and I
down
might
better.
do that in some ways with knitting, because I'll do a German short row and knit instead of purl. Mm-hmm. But really,
I'm taking out the ew.
I'm taking out the ew,
which is purling. And then, but Carol will be like, ooh, but what if we, what if we sauteed it instead of broiling it, and we did this and that? And, oh, this would be so exciting. And some of that comes from a willingness to experiment. And I'm one who says, here are my ingredients, and here's the pattern. And I get to follow the pattern, and poof, I have an edible meal, So, but then I can tell someone else, here's what maybe I changed, I didn't put as much salt in or something, but I can say, here's what I liked about the pattern, here's what I didn't, that kind of thing. And so if a customer's like, but mine should look just like yours, and why doesn't it? The less I change, the more I can answer that question. So, anyway, do we have anything else?
There's 2 more, and I'm going to read.
I'm looking at time and stuff. Go ahead. We're good.
The first one is books. In your opinions, what are the best instructional authors for knitting? And
that's a hard one too, because we don't use a lot of books. We and I feel like on the whole, like, we don't carry a lot of books in the shop, because was the other one related, or should we wait?
The other one, I will get back to her. It's my favorite books in YouTube for spinning, and I don't like. I found someone who did spinning.
You've learned from other people.
I've learned from other people.
Yeah. And that's where, like, we don't have a lot of books in the shop because it's hard unless we only get them from one publisher, like Pom Pom. Like, the more people, I find often when I encounter people, because I run a shop, they're like, well, it just must be magical and wonderful, and you can get all the books you need, right? Because I want books on this specific topic. And the wider the variety of books people are looking for, the wider the number of publishers I might have to try to make accounts with. And I already have so many accounts with so many yarn people. It gets really challenging to keep up with it all and to manage and to keep accounts current with everybody. So, like, if Pom Pom publishes something and it looks good, I'll get it in because I already have an account with them, just to see some of the business backside of this. And there may be some yarn shops that are really good at navigating that. I am not one of them. And part of that is because so many people, the trend has become, I don't want a whole book on this, I just want one pattern. And so they go online for that. And for people who don't like going online, this is a challenge. This is troubling. I will say we've gone over it before. I brought in some intro books. It was like someone Bass, I want to say. It was like Principles of Knitting or something. You got an old copy of it and then you sold it, right?
I sold it.
I learned from one particular book. I wouldn't say it's the best book out there, though. I can't even remember exactly. Like, I might have some. Let me look at this real fast.
The books that Carol and Bud does some great, like, how to build it sweaters. And, you know, like, you do your gauge swatch and then you go and find the numbers. And it's all numbers and charts, and Carol loves it. But
this is the book I learned to knit from. And it's called The Big Book of Knitting. And it is by Katharina Buss. And I don't even know if it's in print anymore. But I wouldn't say it's the very best book out there. It's just what I could get my hands on. And I have it here because, you know, I don't need it anymore. It's part of our, it's not quite a lending library, but it's part
our
of
research library.
Yeah, and it's things people have left with us that people can look through for patterns and things. I wouldn't say it's the best book to learn from, but our intro kit that we sell online has this 60 quick knits for beginners, which has patterns in it. This is from, like, Cascade Yarns co-produces this, so we have easy access to it. But it's also, I think, Soho Publishing, we could get it through them too, who we get Vogue from. Vogue had, like, this has patterns in it, but the whole beginning part of it talks about tools of the trade and has intro skills in it. It really depends on what type of learner you are. If learning from books and pictures and sometimes drawings is helpful, these books are helpful. For some visual 3D learners, it's not helpful. So one of the things they're going to be more big, thick research. If you like the big, thick books full of everything you want to know about knitting, I have those books. They're at home. They're not here. But if you look up the Knitting Guild of America's Masters of Knitting program, they will have a whole list of research books that they recommend you use to go through all 3 levels of the Masters Knitting program. And so I have those books because I was going to start that, and I never finished it, but I have some really great research books. Now, those research books, they're going to start from the very beginning of how to knit and things in them. It's going to be kind of dry. So for some people, that's going to be fascinating and perfect. And for other people, it's going to be like, this is boring, I'm done. It's really, you personally have to figure out how you want to engage in any of these books. That's all of these, like, kind of subjective questions. It's questions that don't seem subjective, seem very, like, objective. Give us some information. But it really depends on your personality type if it's going to work for you. So
I learned to crochet from a book.
I learned to crochet from a DVD because there was no YouTube.
And whenever I've tried to YouTube something prior to your YouTube channel, it's hard to ask questions. It's hard to change the angle of you. Like, you can watch them do it on the camera, but you're like, I want to look at it from a different angle, and I don't learn well like that.
Yeah, I think Very Pink Knits and maybe a few other people do things from different angles, which is cool. I don't necessarily do things from different angles, but I try to, like, I try to rotate and, like, talk about things I've noticed that my students have had issues with. So I try to address things in the videos as I am familiar with them.
I also like the why which you provide with your drawings.
Yeah.
Like, and since I work at a yarn shop, I have Rebecca.
She's got a resource right here.
I kind of, yes and no, because there are days that I'm like, I'm having issues with this, and Rebecca's like, oh, we'll take a look at it. And then 40 people walk in through the course of the day, and I go home with the same issues. So it's not like I get free help. Everybody's like, oh, it must be nice. And I'm like, no, most of the help I get is, so Rebecca, hypothetically, if you wanted to Fair Isle cables, could you?
And I say, yes, but why would you?
So, like,
but,
and I get to listen to all of her classes. Like, I listen to her teach people all day long. So, like, it all kind of builds up in my head, and then I'm doing something, I'm like, but it's not like I have Rebecca as a free resource.
I don't drop everything and go help Liz. I think a lot of people walk in the shop and they're kind of hoping that we will just have time to assist, or we will have unlimited lesson time for people. And if I had other, like, more than just Liz, like, I do have Liz, and I'm very grateful. If we had more people to handle the day-to-day, then we might have more time for lessons and stuff too. But that also takes money that we don't have, and training of other people that we don't have. Hey, part of that's true. I am a control freak. Part of that is true. But I don't think you would want it all dumped on you if I suddenly was like, okay, I have to teach all day. You do everything. Like, everything else.
I don't have time to do everything in the shop that I need to do. Mm-hmm. You don't have time to do everything in the shop that, like, pretty much there's a partition between the two of us and our jobs. It's not like they all overlap. All of the computer work is you. Mm-hmm. I can print stickers, and I can sticker yarn, and I can put away yarn, and I can mail packages, and but I can't ship packages because I get them all packed and ready. So if
we had to, we could figure it out. But I feel like there's a lot of people, and I don't mean to force people away from coming in for help, because I want to help everybody. I do. But people who think, well, you're there 5 days a week, so you must have lots of time for lessons. That's more of a challenge, to have the time and the energy and make space for them with everything else that needs to happen for the shop.
The hiring more people would be to take stuff off your plate, not necessarily to take stuff off of my plate.
Well,
and I'm not taking stuff off of your plate.
For all that she just coughed control freak at me, there's stuff that's her responsibility that you don't want to let go of. Or you might want to let go of, but then you don't like how it's done, so you really don't want... You are a control freak too. We both are.
In the alphabet box, yes, because we lost a card.
Oh, we shouldn't do this on camera. Because I can think of several things like bins and the wall. And there's lots of stuff we are pot kettle on. Absolutely. And you know what? That serves its purpose in many ways. As my therapist would say, that's not all bad. That serves its own purpose on some levels. And sometimes it gets in the way. So anyway, we have to go open the shop.
We do.
I'm sure y'all would like to just let this continue and watch us like have at each other, but we do it with a good deal of love. So
I've worked here 3 weeks.
That's sarcasm. She's worked here 4.5 years. Anyway, so more like 4 3/4.
Almost 5. January.
Oh, in January. Oh, you're right.
January will be 5.
I'm still feeling like it's August and we've only been here for 5 years. Anyway, she's almost worked here 5 years. That's kind of crazy. Okay. So, we don't have anything for y'all tonight. We have virtual sit and stitch tomorrow night. Ooh, excuse me. That was a burp and a breathe in at the same time. That was weird. Coffee. It gave a snort. How fun is that?
At least it wasn't a screenshot.
At least it wasn't a shirt. Okay. So, we have virtual sit and stitch tomorrow night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. You get into Zoom with our shop phone number.
828-877-3550.
And then this Sunday is our once a month dual platform virtual sit and stitch, which is you can come to our Facebook page from 1 to 5 p.m. and see me and hear Zoom, just hanging out. Come in. We always have this thing with in-person and virtual sit and stitch. Come when you can, leave when you have to. But 1 to 5 p.m. on Sunday, again, East Coast U.S. time. Facebook, just go to the channel. You should see the video running. Zoom, get in again with the shop phone number.
828-877-3550.
And rinse, lather, repeat for our normal schedule next week. But the Sunday thing only happens once a month. So the next one is at best going to be in January, but we might find we have to take January off with craziness going on. I think we might have done that in past years. So we just stay tuned. The shop's going to be closed between, we're going to shut down Christmas Eve so I can fly out to see family, and we're going to reopen the Tuesday after New Year's. So it's the 24th through the 2nd or the 3rd. The shop will be closed. Online shop is always open though. So we still have a few more weeks before that hits, but I want to get people ready for that. So if you're planning on, I'll be in town for the holidays between Christmas and New Year's, I'll come see your shop. We won't be there. There are very few times. We try maybe twice a year to shut the shop down for any length of time, but since it's just us, one of us will be exhausted if we try to keep it open without shutting down. So we just whole
and the
hog
other one
shut
will
down.
be exhausted from traveling.
Right. So we just whole hog shut it down, and then reopen back up again. So yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else. If you have questions you would like us to ponder upon, if you have a question that you have always wanted to ask but felt weird asking it, I'm a former teacher, there are no stupid questions. They're all fun for us, even if we're I don't really do that.
Cables.
So, and I gently say yes, but why? But why part I would only say to someone like Liz. So,
because really, why?
But if someone walked in off the street and asked that, I would say that's intriguing. I'm sure you can do it. You'd have to. I wouldn't be pulled the snark into someone I just met. I have boundaries. Read the room. But anyway, so if you have things you would like us, because chances are, A, it's not a stupid question. B, someone else out there is wondering it, because the one about cables, we had multiple people say, I had never thought of that before, and that was a cool question and a cool answer. So, and we don't read out names and call people out on what they're writing to us. We keep it very neutral in terms of this is a question we have. And someone else is probably thinking or wondering the same thing. So send us your questions, and if we, it's like Stump the Chumps for every once in a while, on Car Talk on NPR. It's every once in a while there might be a question where I don't know, but we can theorize. Theoretical knitting.
You can write the shop a letter to do that.
Oh yeah, you can also write. We have all the cards. We keep them all here. And
what's the address?
I was getting to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just for that, I'm going to make her wait. Oh, I want to show off my gnome, too. If you're going to write the shop, it's 35 South Broad Street, Brevard, North Carolina, 28712. And you can address it to Dear Becky and Lizzie, or Sun Dragon Art and Fiber, or both. What?
If you want to email a question, you can email Liz at sundragonartandfiber.com.
Did we not say that yet?
No.
Oops. I finished my cat gnome.
It's so cute.
He still has a little yarn attached back here. I ran out of yarn. Yarn chicken. I will say this again on Tuesday, but yarn chicken. I had this much left of the teal. This is a whole skein of Cascade 220 teal yarn. The hat actually comes off. Ta-da! I think he looks much better with it on. He looks a little bald with it off. But this is a whole 220 yards, and the last row was slip stitching around, so I slip stitched. It means there's a little bit of a top edge and bottom edge, because slip stitching will show on the bottom and the top.
It just kind of looks cool.
I think it looks cool, though. Yeah, I did it with the muzzle color, because I used so little of that color. I've got a ton of that left. But I have 2 gnomes done now, and I have 4 to go for Christmas.
Yay.
So, okay, we gotta go. I just want to make sure I stuck that in.
Christmas dress.
Oh, that's right. Show off your Christmas dress. Oh, can you show off your underskirt? Because it's super cute.
My underskirt actually
It's got,
went
like,
to my
teal.
Saturday's dress.
Teal and poinsettia. Is that poinsettias, maybe?
It's poinsettias.
Yeah. It's pretty. All
Next
the
week
many
I'll
days
wear
of
the
Christmas.
whole barfed Christmas all over me.
Barfed Christmas. Look forward to that next week, everybody. Like, subscribe, all
Ring the
that
bell.
stuff. All the things that help YouTube know that we're important and help more people see us. Bye.
Bye.